Uh-oh.
Okay, we're on air. Hey everybody, welcome to Talk Recovery. And hello everyone, and welcome to Talk Recovery Radio 100.5 FM. You're listening to us live from the downtown east side, and we're at Columbia and Hastings every Thursday, live on the radio. Oh, there's our second guest. He's at the front door, unlocked.
Oh dear.
High-tech security. Hi, Scott. Okay, so we come to you live every Thursday. If you like what you hear, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk Recovery Radio. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook. We usually start the show off with our hot topics, and there's two conversations going on that's making the press. Talk Recovery Radio is powered by Last Door Recovery Center, and that's New West Recovery. And Global BC is actually at Last Door right now because the World Health Organization has just classified video game addiction as an actual disorder. And what they want to do is want to make treatment more available, recognize the disorder as an actual disease and how it's causing harm in a lot of people's lives. So we are talking about that today. It's all over the news, so you can go to Last Door's Facebook page later on today as well and catch that Global BC article. And yeah, that's great news because there are lots of people that don't leave the house and play video games all day. It's definitely something that gets in between relationships. So that's something we want to keep an eye on, and we'll be doing an interview on the radio about video game addiction very soon. I think we've had a show about that, Francis, eh? Yeah, we have. So we'll look at our archives because we've been on air for 4 years now.
Woohoo!
Yeah, 4 years of shows, thousands of listeners.
And we have our very first guest with us today.
Oh yeah,
Remember?
That's right. We're going to be interviewing author Candace Plattor. She's going to talk to us about how to get through New Year's Eve clean and sober. And she was our very first guest years ago. Welcome back, Francis. And later on we've got Scotty D, who's going to be doing our personal story of his story of success in recovery. Another big article that's in the news right now is BC is set to provide free, clean opioids to drug users in 2018. So I think last week the article was like, hey, they're thinking about it. And then this week they're like, oh, we're just going to do it. So obviously decisions are made way before they hit the press because healthcare just doesn't work that fast. In 1 week they decide something. So there was one comment, though, on one of the feeds. I think it was the Vancouver Sun's article. And somebody said, well, we're in an overdose crisis. We're not in a diabetes crisis. And I didn't comment because I don't feel like getting into a war on Facebook, but we are in a diabetes crisis right now. Actually, more people die from diabetes each year around the world than drugs, alcohol, nicotine, and all of them combined. And we eat really unhealthy. And yes, people have to pay for their diabetes medications and so forth. So we're comparing apples to oranges and all that kind of stuff. I think, my opinion, and this is Giuseppe's opinion, I think we just all need to stop arguing about it, and we just need to help people. But my problem with Dr. Tyndall from the CDC, who's kind of behind this free, clean opioids, and this is a call out to him. It's like, I have no problems with giving addicts 3 clean heroin pills a day. My problem is Dr. Tyndall's on record saying heroin addicts can't recover, recovery doesn't work. And so when you have someone like that with an opinion making these kind of decisions, he should not have any power whatsoever. Why can't our healthcare leaders say, recovery works, harm reduction works, here's the continuum of care you choose. But when you got people like Tyndall coming down saying, hey, just do heroin for free because you can't recover, that to me is a crime. And not only should he lose his job, it's just horrible what that man says. Addicts can recover. Addicts do recover, and some addicts don't, and they're the ones that need harm reduction and need support and love and compassion. But there's millions of people that are clean and sober, and I'm just appalled at Dr. Tyndall and what he's doing. So that's my take. I'm going to take over the camera because Francis is going to do our first interview. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Giuseppe. Should we open the door for Scotty there?
Yeah, let's get Scotty. Let's get Scotty.
Let's get Scotty.
This is live radio, everybody. Come on in, Scott. And our second guest. Hey, Scott.
Yay.
You just have a seat right there.
This is budget co-op radio.
Awesome. Love it.
Love it, right?
Yeah. We've got a security door for the front door, but we don't have a security code for that door.
Okay, are we ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Awesome. So today we get to talk to Candace Plattor, author of Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. Very well-known book in recovery circles, very well-known lady in recovery circles. And so we're going to talk to her about that. And you were our very first guest.
I was your very first guest. That's
pretty
amazing.
exciting.
4 years. That's just amazing.
4 years, and unfortunately the overdose crisis has really increased since then. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But first of all, let's talk about loving an addict, loving yourself. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard to love an addict and love yourself?
Well, I think that the people who love addicts are remembering them the way they knew them before. And people really love those people, you know. And I think it's also really difficult for them because they don't know what to do to help. They desperately want to help. They love these people. They want to help. What do? Often they're doing the wrong things because there's very little help out there for people who are loved ones of addicts.
So what are some of the wrong things that you can do? What is a way that you don't?
Well, you know, one of the most common ones is to give money to an addict. Don't ever give money to an addict because you know where it's going to go, right? Sometimes people let them live at home. These are addicts in active addiction I'm talking about. So letting them live in your home, use in your home, drink in your home, become abusive and obnoxious and punch holes in walls and call you every name in the book, and they're still allowed to live there. That's an enabling stance.
So what is the difference between enabling and helping? How do you help your loved ones?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The way that I define it is that enabling keeps the addiction going, and a helping behavior is going to assist it to stop.
Okay, so for those parents that, you know, say they have a daughter, she's 22 and they don't want to kick her out on the streets, but she's using at home and living there rent free and using all her money towards drugs and partying and that sort of thing. So do they say, like, what do they do in order to, like, they don't want to kick their daughter out because they don't want her to be homeless or couch surfing or that sort of thing. But what can they do in that situation?
I get a lot of people, a lot of clients who come to me, a lot of loved ones who come to me saying exactly that. I can't kick them out, I can't kick her out. And I say to them that I really understand how they feel. It's a very scary proposition. But if they're going to tell me that they're never going to do that, if that's a boundary for them, very, very strong boundary, there's not going to be a whole lot I can do. Because what we need, I'm not saying that everybody needs to kick their addicts out. There are many things we can do before that happens, many other strategies to use before that happens, but it may be something that needs to happen. So we need to make it a lot less cushy for an addict. We need to have really clear, healthy, self-respectful boundaries. The loved ones need to start to identify what their boundaries really are. Then they need to learn how to language those boundaries so that the addicts will actually hear it. And they need to learn how to maintain those boundaries, especially in the harder times, because that's problematic. But if you set a boundary, if a loved one sets a boundary and then they cave, because, you know, an addict's job, an addict in active addiction, their job is to wear you down, right? So if you allow that to happen, you might as well never ever set a boundary again, because they're just going to keep poking at you, you know, right here where it hurts, until you cave.
I can't help but think that this sounds a lot like small children.
Well, yes, and I don't know about you, but I remember when I was in active addiction and I was just like a small child, and you had to repeat things to me many, many times for me to finally understand it, and even then I probably didn't.
Yeah, so what are some strategies that family members can do in order to hold their ground? Because it is like a large child having a super huge tantrum, which is actually frightening if that person has any strength.
Yeah.
So,
And if the person doesn't have strength, they'll do something like steal jewelry, or they'll do something passive aggressive if they're not actually aggressive.
Right. So there's safety issues.
There are safety issues.
And even just fear.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some ways, some strategies of people being able to just lock themselves in their room and get a good lock?
Well, some people do that. It's really unfortunate. The way some people are living in their own homes because they've allowed addicts to live in their home, it's awful. And there is no self-respect from the loved ones. They don't feel any of that when they're allowing themselves to be used in that way. But they're so used to it. It's their comfort zone. So addicts, loved ones of people with addiction need to be willing to come out of their own comfort zones. And a comfort zone isn't something that's healthy. It's just comfortable. It's how you've been living for a long time. And it's usually the loved one that needs to come out of their comfort zone before the addict will. I was saying to Giuseppe before that, addicts don't come up to their loved ones and say, please set some boundaries for me. Please set some healthy, clear boundaries for me. That doesn't happen. So the loved ones need to be working maybe with somebody like myself who will help them understand why they haven't set these boundaries. What's going on for them? Why are they not doing this? Because there's usually a reason for that. And once we get to that, and they start to understand that enabling is never, ever, ever a loving act toward an addict, because it just keeps it going.
Keeps it going, right?
It keeps it going. So when they really start to get that, when that light bulb goes on, they change what they're doing. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is that they sort of lead by example. Like they don't wait for the addict to change, that they maybe change the way that they interact with the person that's struggling with addiction, or that they change the way, just the way that they might interact with that person, like just saying, like almost treating them as though maybe they are like a child. Like, I think, like, when I think of my daughter, she's very dramatic. I don't know where she gets it from, but anyways, and she can be very dramatic, and I really have to stand my ground with her. And I do think, like, if I let this get out of hand, she's going to get bigger and, stronger, and it could be frightening. So, and then there's that, right? Because you think, well, in these families, like, maybe in our families, like, I didn't learn boundaries in my family. I learned it in my 12-step fellowship and in my own recovery. Yeah. So, like, what role does that play in terms of, like, even people learning those things in recovery and being able to pass those things on to their children? Because to learn to act in a new way without any support of that new way, I would imagine would be nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting that most loved ones have grown up in families with addiction of some sort. And many of them have learned throughout their lifetimes that being a people pleaser is more rewarded than acting out. So they learn how to please everybody and put their own needs on the back burner. And then they come into marriages, or they have children who become addicted or already were addicted if they're, like a relationship. And they're busy trying to please everyone still. They don't know what else to do. And when it isn't working, it's kind of like that good old Dr. Phil question. I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Phil at all, but every once in a while he says something that's useful. And that question of how's that been working for you? How's that been working for you? He says. And most people say, not very well. And if the answer is not very well, then the next question has to be, are you willing to try something different?
Right. And Giuseppe was alluding to the new government initiatives about giving clean, safe drugs out on the streets. And so there's There's some chatter about whether the government is spending too much money on people with addiction problems, and there's other people that think that these funds could be allocated to better places or more deserving places or that sort of thing. Do you think that the government is enabling the addict, or are they helping the addict?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, in my opinion, addicts are very worthy people and deserve to have good treatment. At the same time, only the addicts who really want that treatment are going to go get that treatment. So we know that. It's a choice about whether to stay in active addiction or whether to go into active recovery. And anybody who's in active recovery knows that, because we've made that choice. Right? So this is such a loaded question. I do think that society enables the addiction. I think we're a very addicted society to begin with, and we're a very enabling society. And a lot of things need to change. I see this all the time. But is it a good idea to give them clean, safe drugs? Is it not a good idea to give them clean, safe drugs? I really heard what Giuseppe was saying about the guy who's talking about this. I'm glad I'm not in that position to have to make that decision. But what I would like to see is for money to be allocated once again, because I think it was really cut back several years ago, once again to treatment, to prevention, to education, to detoxes, which, you want to go into a detox now, and you have to wait days and days and days, and you have to be in a position of being able to call and call and call to see if there's a bed, and that's crazy.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine that's actually going to the schools and talking in the schools, and I contacted my son's principal to see if I could get him in the school, and he's going in the school, but I realized, until then I didn't realize, there isn't anyone going to the school and talking to people. And you think of how many people there are in addiction, in recovery, doing service, and it's surprising that there aren't more energy towards prevention.
Yeah, and there used to be a lot of that in service work for, as part of 12-step programs. I'm not sure if there still is, but they used to do a lot of service work when they'd go out to schools. They'd go out to hospitals and prisons and places where people were still grappling with addiction.
I think we still are, but it was just surprising though. I was like, interesting. There's a bit of a gap there, needs for service. So, yeah. So New Year's is coming up, and I know that you have 10 survival tips for. Yeah. Is it for
the 10 survival tips are for loved ones who love addicts.
Oh, okay.
And they're the ones that probably stay either clean and sober or don't drink very much.
Right.
So talking about New Year's Eve for them in terms of using drugs and alcohol is not really what we need to do. But I think, if we're going to talk about loved ones, if we are, then we need to give them some strategies around what to do for the addicts who are going to,
Okay.
But if you wanted to talk about addicts who are in recovery, trying to stay clean through New Year's Eve, is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah. I just put out a blog post, and I've put out the same one a few years in a row because a lot of people really like it. And it's about, instead of setting resolutions, it's about setting intentions, because it's just a different energy, right? The resolution is what I should do, right? Quote unquote, should do. The intention is, what do I really want to do? And so I think when we think about addicts in recovery who are trying to stay clean through and sober through New Year's, again, that whole choice thing is really important, the concept of choice, because there's 3 or 4 of us in this room now who are in recovery, and any one of us could relapse. Any one of us could. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we could relapse. If we don't make the choice every day that we're not going to relapse, we could relapse. That's how that works. So it's also about, am I going to stay clean and sober during New Year's Eve? If I really want to stay clean and sober, I'm going to do that. if I'm not sure and I'm kind of skittering on the edge, then I might use or drink, and everybody would understand because it's New Year's Eve, and I could get away with it maybe, but it's a self-respect piece. So the intention, instead of a resolution, the intention is an inner kind of thing where you care about how you feel. You care about how you feel inside and whether you're respecting yourself. And addicts and alcoholics especially, we know that when we use or drink, it feels good for about 5 minutes, maybe even shorter, before we realize what we've done to ourselves.
Yes, and I find that honeymoon period gets
shorter and shorter.
It's shorter and shorter. It's like any bad relationship. The honeymoon period gets shorter and shorter.
Yeah, and you're in a bad relationship with yourself if you're not respecting yourself. So but there are strategies. If you really want to stay clean and sober, then there are strategies that you can use. Like make sure your sponsor's available, or if you're not in a 12-step program, make sure that you have a friend or family who will support you in staying clean and sober. There are dances that are clean and sober. There are parties. And if you're an introvert like me, I probably wouldn't go to a clean and sober dance because that's just not who I am. But, to stay alone on New Year's Eve might not be the best idea. They say that an addict alone is in bad company, and I think especially on New Year's Eve because it's really easy to start feeling self-pity. It's really easy to start feeling sad and depressed and lonely and all those things that a drug or a drink might help.
Yeah, I definitely find that I'm a bit of an introvert too, but so I don't know. And I have 3 kids, so whenever I'm alone, it's like, yay!
I know, me too.
I can think.
Pajamas.
It's amazing. Yeah, I know. I can get the clicker. It's far too odd. But anyhow.
But if you're an introvert and you can find a way to also be connected to people during that time. People that you love and trust and don't keep saying to you, oh, get out there, go party. Mm-hmm. No.
I think that's what recovery does, is it allows you to accept yourself. And a big part for me was realizing that all those parties that I was going to is that I needed to drink a lot in order to feel like comfortable.
Normal.
And so when I stopped going to the big parties, then I didn't have to it just sort of erased that whole thing, although I do need to get out more. But anyways, that's another thing. So I want to talk to you about your book.
Okay.
So you're making an offer today on our Talk Recovery page, and what is that offer?
The offer is for the loved ones, for the family, because I work exclusively with families now because it just doesn't work for me to work just with the addict. If the family doesn't change what they're doing, and the addict goes into recovery and then goes back, we're into treatment, goes back into that dysfunctional family. So I work with the whole family. So my offer is for a free 60-minute telephone consultation where they can tell me what's going on for them in their family, and I can let them know how I might be able to help, or somebody else might be able to help, or I can just give them suggestions, and I'd even throw in a free book with that. So,
hey.
Here's the book if you haven't seen it. Yeah, it's been revised a few times, but yeah.
Yeah, and it is a great book, and it's super helpful, and Candace is really well known within the recovery community, and you have some tried and true survival tips.
Yes.
And you do gear your practice more towards the families.
Yeah.
The loved ones and the families.
I work with the addict as well, but not until they're really ready to work with me.
Okay, so they might come in after.
They come in after.
Okay.
Generally, I get the families ready to get the addict ready to be ready for me. And then the transformation happens.
Awesome. And I just happy was just pointing out that I actually forgot to say how you could win the book or the free consultation.
Sure.
So you can just comment your name, right? comment your name. Maybe we should make it more fun, Giuseppe.
I don't know. Let's just do a draw. It's New Year's Eve. So just comment do a comment, do a like, anything on the Facebook
Put a GIF. Put a GIF of
anything, a comment, a like, one of those hearts,
I don't know. No, I want.
And then we'll enter all the names in the draw.
They may just want to put their names.
Yeah, comment,
but an email address or something.
Then we have a program that will take all the names of the likes and everything, and then we'll just do a random draw. Excellent. And so you can win a 1-hour consultation with author of Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, Candace Plattor. And just like or comment on this Facebook live feed, and you'll be entered in the draw. And the item gets awarded not to a person that's using, but to a family member.
Not to the person that's using. This is for the loved ones of the person who's using. Do I have time to talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's an event that's happening tomorrow in Vancouver. It's called the Depression Confessions, and I'm part of that. I'll be speaking and telling my story. So it's for people who are struggling with depression and also probably struggling with addiction, because do we know any depressed people who are not using addictive behaviors, and do we know people who are using addictive behaviors who are not depressed, right? They go hand in hand for most people. So we would really like you to come out. It's at the Roundhouse Community Center in Yaletown, and it starts at 2:00. We have an afternoon segment and then another evening segment, and we'll be sharing our experience, strength, and hope, and we'll be talking about how, if you're ready to let go of this friend called depression or this best friend called addiction, if you're ready to do that, we have a way for you to become involved with us. And so you can go to, I hope I have this right, depressionconfessions.org, and you can order tickets at $16. And if you can't afford $16, please come anyway, because we really understand that. If you'd like to be there, we want you to be there. And it's also being streamed all over the world. So for all the introverts, the depressed people who don't want to get out of their pajamas, we really understand that too. But if you can come, please do. And if you're living someplace else other than Vancouver, then you can sign up to have the streaming. So thank you for allowing me to mention that.
That's great. So Giuseppe, anything else? Are we good? Awesome. Thank you for being on the show again. Candace Plattor from Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. Always a pleasure. How can, you had said before, but I don't know, you said how can people get a free copy of your book?
They can email me at Candace@CandacePlattor.com. Now, you have the correct spelling of my name on your page, I hope, because everybody always spells my name wrong. So it's Candace, and it's Plattor. So it's Candace@CandacePlattor.com. And if you'd like a book or want to talk to me about maybe having a 60-minute consultation, let me know.
Thank you so much for being on Talk Recovery Vancouver. We're going to a song now. Awesome. We're going to listen to Bob Cajun from Tragically Hip.